And so we are live. And I'm now close up again. Good evening, guys. Welcome to the latest edition of Pontificating with Pete. It is Thursday, 9 p.m., and the holiday weekend is upon us. Ireland, never heard of it? Well, it's where my ancestors are from. Some of my ancestors, not all of them. But the Irish continue to impress because that's what my people do. And we're definitely in rare company because let's be honest, it is not easy to stand up to big moneyed interests at any time, but especially right now. I want to give a lot of kudos because the Irish are not just standing with the Palestinian people, they've been standing with them since day one. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of that has to do with the history. Double K, I guess you thought I was feeling a little lonely. It is great to see you, and it is great to have you. And maybe you're Irish as well. And us Irish got to stick together. So it is, and it goes without saying, yes. One of the interesting things about the Irish, which you may not know, I don't know how many people understand the meaning of the Irish flag, but it basically is colored the way that it's colored because one side represents Catholics, which is green. The other side represents Protestants. It's the yellow, orange, whatever you want to call it. A yellow orange, if you will. But a unification of the different religions. Now, of course, obviously Ireland is majority Catholic, but you want to give everybody the opportunity to express themselves in terms of what they want to believe, religiously. Obviously, we know what happened when the Church of England started under, I think it was Henry VIII, I want to say. There is nothing sad to say about being German and Norwegian. I am German and Irish, so don't feel bad. But I think that there will be many things to talk about now tonight. Tonight's interesting because Colin, our esteemed producer, is not with us tonight. He, unfortunately, it was in an area that was hit by the tornadoes. So he is out of commission. And so I will be running the show solo this evening. But our trusty friend Osiris from Middle MAGA will be joining us. And obviously there is a lot to talk about this evening. A lot of stories that are going to get covered. And, that's the thing about everything that's going on right now. There is just so much stuff. There is just so much stuff. You're really having a hard time keeping up to speed with everything that is going on. But I hesitate to really get into a story right off the bat until our friend gets here. But I think it is important to highlight one story in particular, which, for those of you who have been paying attention, obviously you know what our esteemed friend is doing and who she is running for office against. What I will tell you is that, and I've been saying this for a while and I will continue to say it, Wasserman Schultz is going to continue to double down on anything and everything that she has going on regarding her support for the Israel lobby. That is not going to change. She is going to go right over that cliff, assuming she even does go over it. But the level of depravity that she is willing to sink to in order to get her point across, it's very scary what ultimately ends up happening when you are completely captured by corporate special interest money. And in this case, obviously, AIPAC's money. And she has taken a lot of it. I would definitely say that this is sort of like a new level of low, but as we have come to expect, she's willing to go to whatever lengths is necessary in order to maintain herself in the good graces of the power structure within politics. Now, the other day, she was at this, I guess, event pertaining to this continued narrative that they are still selling about Screams Before Silence, which is a pet project of none other than Sheryl Sandberg. Now, for those of you who don't know who Sheryl Sandberg is, this is actually a lady that Jen has known since she was young. Sheryl Sandberg ended up becoming a very high up executive in Facebook. Today, her net worth is estimated over $2 billion. And she is a rabid Zionist, if there ever was one. And so Debbie Wasserman Schultz decided that she's going to continue to put herself right out there, saying, honored to screen Sheryl Sandberg's Screams Before Silence film at the U.S. Capitol. I can't believe this movie has to be made, she said, to prove Hamas used sexual violence against Israelis. We must oppose anti-Semitism that fuels this disregard for women's lives. So, of course, the whole argument here is to never address the genocide, to always try to find a straw man to justify the actions that are going on right now. That is why it is somebody like Sheryl Sandberg who is associated with somebody like Debbie Wasserman Schultz. This is the elitism on steroids. What does a billionaire have to offer that's also a Zionist? Well, as much propaganda as one can push. Now, is it entirely conceivable that there was sexual violence that was committed by Hamas onto Israeli women and possibly children? It's certainly possible. I'm not discounting that. I think it goes without saying that these types of things happen. And they're disgusting and depraved, and they should pay the price. But the idea that you're going to push this propaganda when you know full well it is now being estimated, again, on paper, that they can verify 35,000 Palestinian civilians have been murdered. The number could be as high as 125,000 and still climbing. And the intent to invade Rafah, still there. So, what is the point of her doing this? Well, you want to scream, and I have sat in this room, mind you. I've been in this room. And it can hold a couple hundred people, maybe. And from the looks of it, it's not that packed. There's people there, but not a lot. And the idea behind doing this is to create the narrative that this is justification for what is going on. Now, the importance of this photograph that you will see here should really tell you all you need to know. Because Wasserman Schultz is not just flanked by Sheryl Sandberg, billionaire, on her right. Sitting next to her on her left is U.S. Senator Joni Ernst from Iowa, who's about as conservative as it gets in the U.S. Senate, perhaps in all of U.S. politics. But then again, who wouldn't accuse Wasserman Schultz of being a conservative? I don't even like using the word conservative because that's not really what it's about. What it's about is the depravity within the system. The depravity within the system that suggests that there is a difference. There isn't a difference. When it comes down to it, when it's corporate special interest money that has completely engulfed our system, this is what you get. You get Debbie and Joni sitting side by side fighting for a cause that only a few people give a shit about. And why? They care about it because it's easier to just be amongst those that are within a very, very insulated, select portion of society that wants to basically run with this bullshit. And she's running with it. Will she pay the price politically? I don't know. But the more I see this, the more I am reminded that there is nothing redeemable at this point. There never really was, but this is on a whole other level because the level of danger that one has to enter into when your representative is constantly pushing for the continuation of the genocide. This is what people do. And for those of you who have been paying attention, and I can probably pull up this screen. I want to grab this one real quick that I think you guys are going to like, and we'll bring in Osiris in a second. But this is another you know, when you think about the coordinated messaging that has to go on social media, especially when it comes to all of this nonsense that's going on right now, you have to be on the same page. It is essential that you maintain some semblance of, trying to do the same thing over and over and over again. I, for one, look at this and I think, how do they do it? Like, how do they have the same message over and over again? And the word that they've been using is equivalence. Equivalence of suggesting that Hamas and Israel are not the same. Again, you're distracting from the realities of what's going on. This is not a war. This is a genocide, and it's being perpetrated on the Palestinian people. Why? Because Israel wants their ethno-state, and they want control of the fertile land, which includes $1 trillion worth of natural gas under Gaza soil. And they want it all. And why not? No one's going to stop them. The genocide will continue. And this sad sack of a congressional representative that I have to look at constantly is reminding us all the time that she's not going anywhere unless we collectively band together to work on getting her out. That is it. Nothing else needs to be said. But with that being said, these solo shows I can do, but I really prefer to be able to have a tennis player, if you will, a partner to bounce the ball back and forth, because the conversation is much more free-flowing that way and a lot more fun. So without further ado, he is the host of Stuck in the Middle, Middle MAGA. It's all, what is it? It's all rock and roll to me, I guess. Osiris, welcome back to Pontificating with Pete.
Let's pontificate. What's good, Pete? Appreciate you having me on.
Anytime, man. How's everything going in Colorado?
Great. My wife is upstairs having the kids. They made a mess right now. I just had them start to watch Star Wars.
Oh,
so they
started early.
Yeah, so they're doing force throws, throwing toys all over the place. I'm like, man, once I get done with this live, this house better be cleaned up. But
well, there's a handful of different movies that you can get these kids into. Star Wars is one. Get them into Ghostbusters, the original Ghostbusters. Back to the Future. When we're kids of the 80s, we have a tendency to forget how good we really had it, especially when it came to really good cinema. So I don't think the kids truly understand how lucky they are, but maybe they do. So hopefully this is just the beginning of them really understanding that. Yeah, you don't have to think that you're done with all the film and TV and everything that comes out today. There is some good stuff from yesteryear. Although I will say that The Last Jedi, I had never walked out of a movie in my life. And I did, but then I came. That is without question the worst movie experience in a theater I've ever had. That's really.
And they were a little disrespectful with the story. I didn't hate it as much as other people did, but I definitely understand the problems with it.
Well, the one that I really did like was Rogue One, and that was the one that came out just prior to that.
It was so good.
I'm thinking, you make a movie this good and then you follow it up with this shit. It's like, but what you learn is Kathleen Kennedy is at the very top, and she didn't really have much of a say in Rogue One, and I think it showed, which is why it didn't turn out so bad. It actually turned out really, really good. I have not seen The Mandalorian yet. I just don't make time to watch TV. That's just kind of what it comes down to. But I've heard really, really good things about it. Jon Favreau really takes pride in keeping with the Star Wars nostalgia, but also forwarding the story. So I have respect for the work that he's done as far as that's concerned. So any thoughts on that particular show?
Yeah, the first 2 seasons were really good. Yeah, I think it was after the second season I was out. Just kind of plot didn't go where I wanted it to, and it wasn't interesting. But the first season was excellent. It was really good. It's definitely worth if you have time to go back and watch that first season. First 2 seasons were really good.
Well, I will definitely do that when I have some time. Over the next 3 months, I don't plan on having any time because I'm basically devoted to our cause, and we know what's going on.
August 20th.
Yeah,
right?
it'll be a big day, and we're going to need all hands on deck. That's, we have these very subtle, nuanced ways of talking about it without actually talking about it. Because
Oh,
we have to make sure that there is no crossover because our esteemed friend is not able to do the show until after the election. We do not want to get it caught up with any FEC violations. We know that there are probably going to be watching us like a hawk. But I'm curious from your perspective, do you see a scenario where you see what's going on with APAC right now, and you see how they're getting involved in a lot of these races. Hats off to not just Summer Lee for fighting off APAC, but Thomas Massey was able to fight off APAC the other day as well. The lady, Sulila, I think is how you say her name, Jayapal, Pramila Jayapal's sister, to get into the whole thing about nepotism and all that crap, but she ran for Congress in Oregon's, I think, 3rd district and did not win. The person who did win got millions of dollars from APAC. I'm curious if you think, knowing Debbie's MO and the fact that from her perspective, she would rather be running and nobody know about it, do you see a scenario where APAC coming after our friend would not be good for Debbie? Because any attention that is drawn to somebody who's running against her is likely going to end up being a net positive for the candidate in question, even if the ads are being done as a mode of attack. I could see a case potentially where they may not get involved in this race. How do you ultimately see it shaping out?
absolutely. I think you're looking at basically art of war type stuff, obviously political war, but you would use that strength against them. Absolutely, it's problematic. In this environment, we've already seen Biden making all kinds of, he's in a weird place at his level. So that's trickling down to everybody. You don't want that APAC label at this point. Not right now. It's too risky. So I don't know exactly how it would play there, but I know that would be a risk for sure.
The thing I think people really underestimate when we're talking about Trump, for example, is that he just knows how to win. Does he truly believe everything that he says regarding that Israel totally could do whatever, blah, blah, blah? As far as I'm concerned, he knows that he's in the driver's seat, and anything that is going to drive a wedge into Biden is the object. There is no other play. The play is to just simply win the race. And so whether he's truly going to be like, oh, yeah, Israel could do what it wants, or I'll take it a step further. I know there are people who suggest that Trump will take it a step further. Again, you don't know because he's not there. The only thing you do know is that the economic circumstances of this country is in a very bad way right now. That is without what's going on in Gaza, but you throw that into the mix, and you really have to wonder at this point, what is the strategy? Because it could end up becoming a landslide if they're not careful. Like that's how I think detrimental this particular circumstance is right now. And I agree with you that tagging along with APAC in any capacity could ultimately end up being your undoing. I think we'll really have a good idea about it in a couple of weeks, depending on what happens in Jamal Bowman's race with that guy Latimer, because that's the race that they're really stuffing a lot of money into. Mm-hmm. But I agree with you. I think that there has been an emboldening, sort of an emboldenment moment happening right now where people are basically looking at APAC and basically doing as Jen has been doing, which is to say, bring it. You want a piece of me? Come and get it.
Yeah. With the laws, so my thought would be, are they going to go dark money? I don't know all the campaign finance laws and all that. Is there a way that they would go? Because, I don't know if you've seen this blow up. There's this great person on X named Mel, Village Crazy Lady, who's been going through the filings and seeing the small donations coming through. It looks like AI or something through Act Blue. This is from Republicans and Democrats, are using people's name to funnel big money through to make it look like small donations. Have you followed that at all?
Yeah, I've seen those types of things happen before, where basically what will happen is they'll get these substantially large donations, but then they'll put out these mass email campaigns, for example, and ask you to just donate $1, because what will end up happening is it'll balance out the number sheet. So if somebody donates 10 grand and then you get 100 people that donate $1, then your donation average drops all the way down to, whatever the number is, $50, $35. It ends up looking a lot better on paper when in reality, it's a completely corporate funded, effort. And when they're constantly saying that you're all just you're all the donors who are getting involved with AIPAC or the MFI, any of those organizations that are part of the Israel lobby, that they're all just a bunch of Trump donors or GOP donors. No, what they are is that they're corporate donors, and they donate to both political parties. What they don't donate to are non-corporate candidates. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of them, which is why somebody like Thomas Massie is such an outlier within the GOP. But they came at him hard. They threw $400,000 in a race that they knew that Massie was ultimately going to win, and of course, he won in a landslide. But they're basically trying to let you know that they're willing to come after anybody if they're not willing to walk this fine line. I just don't think that they're going to be able to sustain this, because I think they bit off more than they can chew this time. And I think that the ramifications of the genocide is very real.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy, though? Let's look at the GOP side just for a second. Thomas Massie is literally the only one who you would say is, I don't even want to say anti-AIPAC. He's not even anti-AIPAC. It's weird. But, the only one that will challenge the Israel lobby. Is that correct?
As far as anybody in the GOP, I don't know if there's anybody else, but he definitely is a standalone representative. He is very special. I've always had respect for him because of the fact that he doesn't meet with corporate lobbyists and he doesn't take corporate money, which is obviously a rare thing in the GOP. But that is definitely something that should be admired, because that is the way of the future. I think we are accelerating to that point where people are looking around and saying, this really should be how it should be always. This shouldn't be an outlier. This should be how it is forever. We don't need corporate special interest money influencing our political system. And that has been going on, obviously, for way too long. And as sad as it is, it usually takes a monumental circumstance like what's going on right now for people to look around and say, okay, I've had enough of this. This is way too far. This is way too much. I am not going to be, on board with a genocide. There is no way to deny what is going on right now. They try to deny it, but you can only sweep it under the rug for so very long. And, we have been able to meet a number of people down here that are Palestinian, that are Muslim, that have lost family, that are suffering immensely. I mean, I've met people that have lost 30 family members. It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah. You see, Pete, that's why I'm going to take it to the cat fight that happened. That's why I was so upset with this MTG and Jasmine Crockett. What are they? This stupid, name calling cat fight when we've got serious things going on that really are apolitical. This should be at least apolitical. It shouldn't be Republican and Democrat. And actually, I'm feeling that more and more. I'm feeling it more and more that politics doesn't matter as much. Like, I'm chatting with a lot of people that you might say are on the left, maybe even more than on the right nowadays.
I look at that whole situation, and the only thing that I can take away from it is, yes, there's no question that Marjorie Taylor Greene is a clown, and she's not a serious person, and she absolutely went after Jasmine Crockett, who has been a guest on our podcast multiple times, for the purpose of whether she was intending for it to be racially charged, which it probably was. But obviously she couldn't make a comment about her hair. Then that's like fucking giving away the game. But she had to make a comment about her eyelashes. And it's like, I see what you're doing, Marjorie. And you're being a bigot, which is something she just does on a regular basis. The thing that made it bad, or I shouldn't even say bad, what made it even worse is that you now have AOC who had to get involved in something that she had no business getting involved in. Jasmine Crockett is a tough cookie if there ever was one on that hill, and she is more than capable of defending herself. But Alex really loves the spotlight. Yep. And she really, really hates Marjorie, and she saw an opening to get involved. And I almost feel like saying, when she tried to get tough with her words, like, oh, baby girl, you don't want, and I'm saying, listen, Alex, it's one thing to try to defend a colleague. It's another thing to try to get tough with a woman who would wipe the floor with you if you ever got a physical altercation. So don't, that type of thing, that's the thing that upsets me about her, because I think Alex is really good on most of the issues, but there's this political theater gravitas that I just have no time for. I have no interest in it whatsoever. And then you compound it even further where Jasmine, listen, I don't care if she wanted to throw a name at her or whatever. That's her business. Listen, Marjorie, you started it. Jasmine is definitely the type that's going to finish it. But then you go out there and now you're trying to sell T-shirts and stuff with that. No. Oh,
yeah.
God.
But see, in the moment, I could see it. I have the exact same read on you as AOC doing it. Because in that moment, I know, because I'm on social media a lot, too much. I know in that moment that's going viral. You could become at one with the algorithm. I know for sure AOC knew in that moment, even though most people don't watch these hearings, or I forget what they were talking about, Merrick Garland. Most people don't watch, but they knew that was going to get clipped up. But let me ask you this now. I was really upset because I've backed the pro-Palestinian protests. I did not back Black Lives Matter at all. I backed the pro-Palestinian protests. They make way more sense to me. They're going after institutionalized power. But then they let AOC. Did you see the picture? When AOC and Ilhan Omar came to visit them while they were protesting in the camps? To me, if you're protesting, you don't bring them in to take selfies and stuff. You bring them in to say, here's our demands, go out and get it for us. I thought it was too friendly. What's your read on that?
I didn't actually see it.
Okay.
Look, I think Ilhan is the thing about Ilhan that I don't think people truly understand, even though they always like to point out the fact that she wears a hijab, and we do have an anti-Muslim sentiment that is only growing leaps and bounds by the day as this continues to go on. Ilhan is one of the most effective legislators in all of Congress. Like, I think the last session, in terms of being able to either enact policy or to get amendments passed, she was 4th out of 435.
Really? I didn't. I have to do some homework.
She's really, really good at her job. Now, AOC, not so good. And that's what I've always maintained is the problem here with Alex is that as a legislator, she is completely ineffectual. As an activist, I mean, she could get 1 million people to rally on a cause if she wanted to. That's real power. And in many ways, that's more powerful than anything she could ever accomplish on the Hill. The thing is that I think Alex is going to run for president in 28. So there are those things that you have to keep in mind. Is why is she acting this way? Like, what are the signs? There is going to be an opening for a populist left run in the next presidential election for obvious reasons. And there's really no one in that left lane that can cultivate that type of power. We already know who's going to run in 28 if somehow Joe does not get replaced over the next, couple of months. It's amazing. We're in the ending part of May and we're still debating whether Joe's going to get replaced. That's incredible. If that doesn't say that you're going to lose, I don't know what does. But I digress. Point is, you're going to have Newsom, you're going to have Pritzker, you're going to have who else is going to run? Obviously, Whitmer's
Whitmer.
Whitmer's going to run, even though a lot's going to come out about her regarding Flint and Kalamazoo. Always amazing when they decide they want to go for the brass ring, the type of stuff that will ultimately come out that will take it to the next level in terms of their depravity and what they're involved in. But I would say between those three, those are probably the top three in terms of governors that are going to run, and governors usually are the ones that get the most gravitas in either party. Governing is the role of the president, govern the country in the highest office. However, I do think one of the things that's going to be very telling is going to be what somebody like Alex ultimately ends up doing. And that's why when you have these scenarios like, I have an opportunity to make I have an opportunity to go viral on social media for the next, 48 to 72 hours. Yep. I'm going to take that opportunity. I know it's going to look kind of finagling in a way, like I kind of maneuvered my way into a situation that I really was not even supposed to be involved in. I mean, there's like 25, 30 congressional representatives up on that panel, and AOC immediately has to jump in there to say something to Marjorie. I felt like saying, you kind of stole Jasmine's thunder in that moment. She had an opportunity to just say something back to her. And instead, you tried to make it about you. And that just rubs people the wrong way, at least from where I sit. I mean,
No, I agree. And she knows Jasmine Crockett is it fair to say she's a rising star in the Democrat Party? She's
I would
on
say,
CNN all the time.
I mean, Jasmine is definitely somebody who I think she has very strong political ambition. I think she's definitely more centrist, without question. I don't think she's corrupt. I do not think that at all. I think she's got a lot of she's got a nice base of support. She initially came on our podcast. It was a little over, I want to say it was about 2 years ago. She's actually the House representative in Texas that led the walkout when it came to the assault weapon legislation that they were trying to get a hold up on with Governor Abbott. And she's the one who led them to get on the buses and go to DC. So she's got a lot of cojones. Like she's got that in her. And you always have to respect somebody who takes action, not somebody who just stands on a soapbox and pontificates. Sorry, I have to do that. But ultimately, she is a exceptional powerhouse as a state legislator, as a attorney, as an activist in her own right, now as a congressional representative. The only thing that's going to hold her back is winning statewide office as a Democrat is going to be very, very difficult. The only person that I think could potentially get knocked off if the right person came along would be Ted Cruz. He is the one loathsome person in Texas that even Republicans don't really like. Now, would somebody like Jasmine eventually run for the U.S. Senate, 2-3 terms from now in 2030 against Cruz when he's up for re-election again? Now, that I could see as being much more realistic. Would she have to give up her congressional seat to run for governor against Abbott? That's going to be the big question because there's a lot of people who are going to try to push her to do it.
I don't think that doesn't sound like that would be a good decision, right?
If she has to give up her seat, no.
Yeah.
Because Abbott's not going to lose.
Yeah.
But it creates a scenario where her momentum and her brand, her name ID becomes substantially large. And I could definitely see that. I don't think, despite what Metalopoly has to say, despite what other people have to say, you as a black man know that what Marjorie was trying to do with Jasmine was figure out a way to incite her without directly saying something racially charged. But in a way, there's no question that was her intention as far as I can see.
I think that's a fair depiction. I wouldn't call it racist, and even if it were, my approach is I'm not going to make it about race. MTG, she was out of line. She was the first one out of line. I'm going to let her be the first one out of line. I don't want to get down in the gutter with her, but I think it's fair to wonder, to ask what was really behind that comment, MTG. So, but that's just theater. The reason I brought that up was look at what they're doing when we have real stuff. We need to fire all of them. I saw Kim Iverson yesterday endorsed Jill Stein, Green Party. What's your thoughts on I don't think we've talked about the Green Party much. What's your thoughts on the Green Party and Jill Stein?
Well, I do think that Jill is it's kind of interesting. I actually think, depending on what Dr. Cornel West ends up doing, excuse me, because I don't think his campaign is really going anywhere right now.
No, it's not.
I have no doubt that RFK is going to get 5% of the national vote. I think that is very likely. But the more that this genocide continues, the more fed up with the two-party duopoly that the electorate is feeling, and especially if it really looks like Joe is just basically a sitting duck, which I do believe he is, I can definitely see a scenario where I think a lot of people are going to just cast their vote for Stein, whether they truly support her or not, just because there is this sentiment of giving an FU vote at this point. I do think that there are a lot of people who are looking at this and just saying, especially in states that are not going to decide the election. If you're in a state like our, good friend Double K is in Wisconsin, somebody who's in Michigan, somebody who's in Pennsylvania, somebody who's in Arizona, somebody who's in Nevada, and somebody who's in, perhaps Georgia, even though I think Georgia's, especially with everything that's gone on, with the whole, Trump debacle, I think Georgia's probably pretty safe at this point that it's going to be in the red column. But the point is, if you're in those states and you feel that it's still necessary to vote along party lines, it is what it is. But I can definitely see a scenario in a lot of states where we know where the vote splits are going to break, and it's not going to make a difference one way or the other. State like Illinois, state like New York, state like Texas, state like California, people are going to end up voting in a way that they probably have never really voted before, where they're just going to say, well, I can't participate in this. And Jill Stein is the only person who is talking about this monumental issue of our time, which is this is a genocide. It's going on. And by the way, I'm a Jewish woman who's also from the boomer generation. So she really is this outlier that I think a lot of people really appreciate. And above everything else, name ID matters. And the average voter knows who Jill Stein is. This is not her first time at the rodeo.
Yep.
She's done this before. You know, I think she could have done a much better job in 2016. She got, I think, like 2.5% of the vote. But this is a whole other world now. And I do think that she's gonna be a formidable opponent. I do. I think that she's I think a lot of it will come down to what Dr. West ultimately ends up doing. If he steps aside, then the lane really is wide open for her. But my understanding is that at most, Dr. West will be on maybe a dozen to 15 ballots, and that's it. So.
Yeah, it's kind of, man, I like Dr. West, and it just kind of went off the tracks. He was going to run with the People's Party and then went independent. Now he's with, I don't even know where he is. He is with his own party now. I don't even know where he is now. And it's just his whole campaign got clouded. Jill Stein's got a rhythm to her campaign. You know what she's about. She's pretty steady. Like you said, you've got the name recognition. What happened with Dr. West? What went wrong there?
You know, I don't pay or put too much stock into what, you know, Jimmy says and some of the other guys are, you know, just like going after him on this notion that he's like a fraud and all that. But do I think it's plausible that maybe he flew a little too close to the sun and was afraid that a lot of what he had built over the years was basically going to get thrown away if he really carried on, especially when he was on the Green Party ticket and they started coming after him on a personal level. They started digging into his past, that he owed like back taxes, which is shocking. You know, it's like the first thing that they do with a black politician is they try to find out if you got any back taxes, you know, kind of, I mean, listen, don't ever compare somebody like a Dr. Cornel West to somebody like an Al Sharpton. You know, Al Sharpton is a grifter. Dr. Cornel West is an actual intellectual who is trying to do right by society. But again, when you fly too close to the sun, when you are actually trying to enact systemic, fundamental change in this country, they're going to come at you with everything they got. And I think from his perspective, he's only willing to go so far to, I don't want to say be a protest candidate, but, you know, he wants to get the message out there, and I think that that's important. But I do think Jill Stein is willing to fly close to the sun. I think she's willing to take that heat. And that is something that is very appealing to a lot of people right now, on top of which, as I said, she's already done this before. She's already taken on the ire of the entire establishment. They blame her for Hillary Clinton losing in 2016. And the fact that she's like, okay, now I'm really going to show you how powerful I can be. That's ballsy. And I think to a voter, even to a lefty, fringy party like the Greens, in this moment, anybody can capture lightning in a bottle if it's something other than what the two top duopoly candidates are selling to the American people right now.
Yeah, for sure. We had big news on the Libertarian, just to switch real quick. I don't know if you saw what was going on with the Libertarian Party National Convention this weekend. It's starting, I don't know if it starts today or tomorrow.
Well, I'm totally speaking at the event. I'm totally speaking. It's going to be a great experience. And I'm totally going to tell them how I'm a libertarian, even though I'm really not. But believe me, you're going to want to vote for me. As far as I'm concerned, great. Make your case. Tell the Libertarian Party, which are very principled, conservative, you know, rural conservatives mostly, that voting for you is going to be good for them. Now, I've heard Chase Oliver. I actually think he's a pretty decent candidate, all things considered. I don't think that the Libertarian Party's ever really had a candidate that really inspired, but I thought he was pretty good. But we've had Angela McArdle on the podcast. I think what she's trying to do is necessary, because I do think that libertarianism is growing exponentially in this country. And I think to deny that reality is foolhardy, to not recognize that we have a huge spending problem in this country. Not that we can't spend, which is what libertarians want you to believe, but that we have a corrupted financial system led by the Fed that only allows money to basically be facilitated to the rich and nothing more. And so as a result, libertarianism naturally is growing in strength and speed. The fear that I have is whether or not that libertarianism shift is going to go left or is it going to go right. If it goes middle, it's still rough, but better than it going to the right. And so I am curious to see how that's ultimately going to unfold.
Well, when you say left or right on, what? How do you mean?
Well, the difference with left and right libertarianism is simply this. There is something to be said for being a left libertarian, which believes in fiscal responsibility, and a right libertarian who believes in survival of the fittest. Okay. And there is a difference in terms of that economic philosophy.
Yeah, I can answer that question for you.
Sure.
It's going to go right. It's going to go right. I'm because it's led by, you had Angela McArdle on the podcast, Angela McArdle, Michael Heiss, Comic Dave Smith, and others. They are definitely on the live and let live, survival of the fittest. And they're the ones running basically the show there. So it is going to go right.
I definitely like Dave Smith. I think he's very, very sharp, and I know there's a lot of people that have been pushing for him to run for president. I think that he's smart enough to know that he has a lane where he can be very effective without putting himself out there as a candidate. And anytime he goes on with Rogan and Rogan gives him that platform to reach 10 to 15 million people, he's got a message that really resonates, especially when it comes to civil liberties and especially when it comes to endless war. He is spot on. I think a lot of people can learn from his sentiments and what that represents, because I do think that we are in a very unique period right now. And having that bridge between the progressives and the libertarians is very real. How that's going to shake up electorally, I don't know. But very often we get so caught up in what's going on at the highest level, and we're not as concerned about what's going on at the local level. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people need to understand. If you can't go to like a local coffee shop and just talk about everything that's going on, do you know who your city council members are? Do you know who your mayor is? Do you know who your county commissioners are? Those things matter. Yes, it does matter about what's going on at the top, but we really don't understand how much power we have. We just don't use it. And yes, they are going to make it tough. They're going to make voting tough, and both sides do it. Both sides do it. So this idea that Republicans are worse than Democrats when it comes to voting, no, both sides suck. So understand that the reason they suck is because they don't want to give up power. It's very intoxicating, especially for people that don't have a lot of prospects. If you don't have a trade, if you don't have the ability to go out and make money outside of being a government official, that's a dangerous place to be, because the people who have those jobs, they will move heaven and earth, like my representative, Wasserman Schultz, to keep that job. It's not like anybody else is hiring them to do anything. Wasserman Schultz has been a congressional representative for over 20 years, and she's been in politics for over almost 35, which is just crazy. But this is what they do. And so trying to find these alternative pathways, whether it is through the Greens, whether it is through the Libertarians, it's something else. It's not just sticking with the same bullshit. And the beautiful thing about local elections, for the most part, city council, county commission, those are nonpartisan races. So if you identify as Green or Libertarian, or you identify with RFK's message, or if you identify with something that's more traditional liberal or more fiscally conservative, you can run for these positions without declaring your party affiliation. Now, granted, there are places where you attempt to do that, and they'll eventually figure out what side of the aisle you're leaning towards, and they will make it a partisan race, even if it is not in name, if it's not officially in name. But that's where a lot of this change can come from. And that's why I do think that the Libertarian Convention will be interesting. And that's why I think it's extremely savvy on Trump's part for going and speaking at that convention.
Yeah, it's going to be big, man. That's a big deal. I mean, only a couple years ago, they had somewhat naked dudes dancing on stage.
Yeah.
Now they got Trump, RFK, Vivek.
That's power, man.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
power.
What do you think about RFK?
Well, the truth about why RFK has the ability to change the narrative of politics in this country is not because I don't think he's got some good ideas. He does. But he is a rabid Zionist, and he's with Rabbi Shmuley, and Shmuley is not good for business. The sooner he understands that is the sooner he'll be a much more formidable force in the general election. He is a Kennedy after all, and this country is in desperate need of a change. So I can see the case. And what he has done, which is what I believe in him for, is he is the only presidential candidate talking about the fact that Vanguard, State Street, and BlackRock are going to own 60% of the single-family homes in this country by the end of the decade. And when that happens, the average person will never be able to build generational wealth for the foreseeable future. And for me, that is the issue of our time in terms of economics. I think people drastically undervalue how important that really is. If you don't have the ability to build generational wealth, I mean, you can complain about the issue of the day, but there's a reason why so much has changed. And you could talk about the devaluing of the currency. You could talk about the hoarding of wealth. I think RFK is going to be a force. I think he's going to shake things up. I think there's enough juice out there where, and even Jen has said this, there's a lot of people that are going to walk into that booth. And if the names that they see on their ballot are Biden, Trump, and Bobby, they're going to vote for Bobby just because he's there and he represents something else. Now, unfortunately, and this is what's created an opening for Jill Stein in a very big way, RFK cannot get right on Israel. Now, whatever the reason is that he can't, and I think that there's something there, something very under the surface that is not being talked about. Do they have something on him? I think it's possible. I think he could be a Zionist, but I also think that he's still a Kennedy, and the Kennedys have been a marked family for a very long time. So if the third rail is that he can't get right on Israel, because if he did, he'd probably get into the 20s in terms of percentage, in terms of the vote. Mm-hmm. I mean, it would change everything. If he came out and said, I actually support a free Palestine, it would skyrocket his campaign as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's just weird. You're right. There's something, we don't know what it is. There's something else there because there's a big difference in the following he could have with the two takes. That's a very interesting thing. Trump thinks RFK is taking votes from him because he's been taking pot shots at him. So
I think RFK is taking votes from both.
Yep.
I think the argument could be made both ways, and I think the biggest mistake that the Democrats made was to rig the primary again.
That pissed him off. Ooh.
It should have pissed Bernie off. Mm-hmm. But Bernie is not a fighter the way that they are. And instead, RFK's like, hey, if it costs you the election, too bad. I have a right to run, and you prevented it. Now you're really going to find out what I'm all about. And that's ballsy, man. That's what I like to see. I like to see anybody who's willing to take on the fight. If you're willing to take on the fight, then you should be given the respect. I am so tired of everybody playing defense and being afraid to say what needs to be said. For whatever reason, this is not, I am not in any way, shape, or form going to get on board, with all of this shit that's going on right now. But I think ultimately, we've got to have the wherewithal to say, okay, we're going to try something different this time. And maybe that's going to set the precedent going forward. I can only hope that it does, because I do think that people are tired of the way things are. At what point do you just say, all right, what the hell with it? Let's take a chance.
Yeah, I think the youth, I'm looking at the youth, and a lot, at least the ones that are politically active, they seem to be going away from the establishment. I think that's why you're seeing all the old heads retire. And I think a lot of people are trying to pretend that they're populists because that's the sentiment from the young. It doesn't matter if you're right, left, liberty. All of them are the ones that I chat with, at least. I don't know how big this is. Every single one of them are anti-corporate right now.
Yeah, I think that is a very big part of it. And there's also an uprising that is going on in this country right now. I find that the conservative movement, particularly the social conservative movement, just as much as I cannot stand the woke left, I cannot stand the socially conservative right. I can't stand it. I am very much libertarian in that regard. I do not care what you believe in as long as you're not hurting anybody else. But as you know, Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker, the thing about it is that he's an exceptional kicker. Like he's like an all-time great kicker. Now, this guy, he identifies as a Christian, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when you go out and you start making speeches about these things that you believe and thinking that there isn't going to be blowback, when basically what you're essentially saying is that men should basically be in charge and women should be subjugated as a result, yeah, you're going to get blowback, pal. Maybe for you that works. And this idea that, well, he was speaking at a Christian institution. Look, I've got a short clip of it. We'll play it and we'll see if there's anything to make of it. As far as I'm concerned, you can still say what you want to say, but ultimately understand that the blowback is going to come. But then it just further perpetuates the culture war. And that's the type of crap that like I said, I have absolutely no patience for. So here we go.
49ers.
That is now 9 consecutive makes from outside 50 for Butker.
But this morning, Harrison Butker is making headlines for his remarks off the field during a commencement address at Benedictine College, a conservative Catholic liberal arts school in Kansas.
It is safe to say that over the past few years, I've gained quite the reputation for speaking my mind.
Butker sounding off about working women.
I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now about to cross this stage and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world.
Butker then referring to Pride Month, which celebrates the LGBTQ community, as a deadly sin.
Not the deadly sin sort of pride that has an entire month dedicated to it, but the true God-centered pride that is cooperating with the Holy Ghost to glorify him.
Honest to God, and to me, this is the real problem that I have. It's one thing if we lived in a society today where the mother can afford to have being a stay-at-home mother and raise the children. That does not exist anymore. Even in these rural parts of the United States, like a state like Missouri, it's not like that. And so for him to go out there and make these statements, granted, he's also a multimillionaire, so it's a hell of a lot easier to make those statements because for him, his wife can stay at home and take care of their children. But the average person cannot do that. And Benedictine, I believe it's a Catholic institution. There's a number of college. It's a college system, but there's a number of Benedictines around the United States. This just happens to be one that was close enough by for him to go and speak at, and he is a Christian. But this idea that women don't want to work. All right, listen, I'm sure that there are women that want to stay home and take care of their children without question, but you can't afford to do it. And so denying the economic realities of this time and just saying, well, you've been lied to. You just don't want to. You are being told that you need to work when you don't really need to. And all I'm thinking is they don't have that choice. And that is what's being missed here. It ends up turning into this culture war bullshit when we should be talking about the economic ramifications of why a mother can't stay home and take care of her fucking kids.
Peter, I mean, that's really what the essence of Make America Great Again is supposed to be, is what you're just saying there. I have no problem with anything Butker said, and I agree with you 100%. So now that he said that, what's really the conversation? The conversation is about him being misogynistic or, sexist or something like that. No, I didn't get that. But what you're saying there absolutely is the takeaway. What person other than people who are very well off are able to live that life where their wife can just be at home? And that's the problem. And I think you should have, not that what women should have to be at home, they should have that option more frequently. And I know it wasn't there for everybody back in the day, but we just came up on, what was it, the 4th anniversary of George Floyd recently?
Yes.
Steve Bannon has one of the best takes on the best take I've ever heard on George Floyd. And he went the angle you're talking about. He said, I don't even want to talk about the police brutality. What if there were jobs in America, like maybe years ago, there's a factory in Minnesota. Who knows if George Floyd or someone like George Floyd would have had good job right out of high school, good paying job, maybe even have a wife, kids, and even a lake house up in northern Minnesota if we kind of focused on America more than anything else, giving money to Israel and all this other, in Ukraine and all this other stuff. So I think that's a great take. I might have to do a segment on that. I might cut you up. I might clip this up, Peter. That's the takeaway. I love it.
And I do think that his, look, the ignorance that comes out of the Christian right, particularly when it comes to LGBTQ, this is where the line has to get drawn. If that is what you believe, that is perfectly fine. You can believe whatever you want to believe. The second you start making it policy and affecting people's ability to live, that's where you're fucked up, and that's where there is no tolerance. That has always been my biggest gripe with the GOP. There are a lot of issues that I take with that side, but there is no bigger issue I have with the GOP than the evangelical right that controls a significant portion of the base. And
I've had problems with the people on the right as well. I mean, gender affirming care is one of those things where I said, if parents in consultation with the doctor and their child decide to do a medical treatment, it has nothing to do with me. I don't need to legislate. Why would I legislate against that? That they're making their own decision for their own family. And I think you're right. That's where it crosses the line. But it can cross the line both ways, though. I don't want, it's almost like they want to legislate verbiage and different stuff with it. No, I don't need that. But I agree with you completely. We don't need to legislate this stuff for each other. We need to kind of localize that. We don't need federal legislation for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, the worst thing that I still remember when it came to Matt Walsh's crusade with the "What is a Woman?" And don't get me wrong, I'm dead set against the Dylan Mulvaney's and the swimmer getting the person
Leah Thomas, yeah.
Leah Thomas. I'm totally against that shit. But when you say that there's 2 million adolescents in this country that are trying to go through a sex change, and in reality, it's the number that's closer to 6,000. I have a real problem with that, because that's that level of propaganda that should be completely intolerable for anybody. And unfortunately, the rage machine works very well on the right financially. There are guys that make a lot of money doing this. And I know you've had some favorable things to say about the likes of Nick Fuentes. I would not. I think he's scum, but that's me. We're not going to agree on everything. I also think that it's easy to point these fingers and say the right thing because, look, Trump says the right thing a lot of the time. Doesn't mean he actually means it. Doesn't mean that he's actually going to advocate for the things that need to be advocated for. But that's the whole point of this segment and why I think it's very important. There are things that anyone is allowed to say if that's what they truly believe. I don't have a problem with Harrison Butker being a conservative Christian. I think that that's perfectly acceptable. I think it's even acceptable that you think a mother should be at home and taking care of her children. But what you're not going to hear from him is how things have gotten so bad in this country that mothers can't stay home and take care of their kids anymore because they can't afford it. Because that would go against the very capitalist construct that we're living in right now, in which he has made himself a very wealthy man. So going against that, not going to happen.
Yep. But I love how you always take these things and you're like, well, what's the real issue here? It often comes down to basically the same type of thing with, I don't want to call it class warfare, but it's really, are we focused on the right thing? Like when we're talking about the Butker, and we're not focused on the right thing with the Butker speech. We're not focused on the right thing with the cat fight in Congress. There's so many times we're just distracted by this, by the, like a butterfly, and we're off to the side. I wish we were more laser focused. I often say we don't deserve, I hate to say this, I don't want to be black-pilled at the end here, Pete, but I say, like, we deserve what we get. If we're not willing to fight for it, if we're not willing to have a conversation with people for it and have real conversations to try and enact change, then we're not going to get anything better. We're not going to get health care. We're not going to get anything like that.
No, and we're not going to get these things because, unfortunately, there is still a level of stubbornness that comes with it. It's like trying to explain to people that are dead set against big pharma and private insurance. And there has been a very large growing sentiment on the political right that does not want to deal with them anymore. The only way out of it is through single-payer healthcare. There is no other way. I mean, there are other options, but this is how you cut off the head of the snake. If you don't want big pharma and private insurance controlling our elected officials, then that is the only path forward because it removes the for-profit middlemen in between us and our doctors. Single-payer healthcare is still a free market health system in the sense that if you're a doctor that's better than the next doctor, you can make $1 million because you're good at your job, and you can have a laundry list of people that want to see you because of your reputation, because of your effectiveness, etc. If you're not a good doctor, then the free market's going to decide that it's not going to work out for you. This is not communism. It's not even socialism. Socialized medicine is a means of the government funding the health system. And the free market will dictate who benefits from it. But it's pretty fucking clear what it is. Just saying.
Believe it or not, just to kind of bring it to a positive, a white pill, I listened to Charlie Kirk a lot. He was on a college campus doing his thing where he takes questions, and one of the kids, the young men, asked him about universal health care.
Yep.
And you would be shocked. Charlie Kirk was like, because in the past he was adamantly against it. This time he was like, it's a conversation. I was like, what? Charlie Kirk was like, you know what? You might be surprised by my take. I think we need to have a conversation about it. Yeah. So, I mean, the tides are, that's a sign right there. I was shocked.
I mean, if I was going on a national marketing tour to convince people that single-payer healthcare is how we get out of our own way when it comes to healthcare, which is probably the biggest detriment we face on the domestic side today, there is no question that if we do not want to have Pfizer have the power that it has anymore, this is it. This is how you defang Pfizer. Sponsored by Pfizer. The fact, and I've always said, and I've always get to the core issue here. I was none the wiser in the early stages of the pandemic when it came to the issue of ivermectin. Now, whether or not ivermectin is the solution for people that are stricken with different levels of effective COVID, illness. The truth is simply this. The national TV circuit went around saying that ivermectin is horse dewormer. Now, is there ivermectin horse dewormer? Yes, there is. There's also a human form of ivermectin, and you had every national outlet telling the American people that there is no such thing. And why would they do that? Because Pfizer pays them billions of dollars to shut the fuck up and do what we say. Yep. Because there is endless amounts of money to be had. There is a reason why they tell you that, nope, you're going to get 2 shots and you're going to get boosted every couple of months. Why? Because you're a bunch of suckers and we're going to take you for all you're worth. How? Because we own the government. We're going to get the subsidies, not you, not the people who need them. And you're going to get people complaining about the fact that you got a fucking $1,200 check. Meanwhile, we're literally walking out the back of the bank with the briefcases full of gold. That's what we're doing. And so when you see that, when you see it clear as day for what it is, you can't unsee it. Now, I do think that there's a lot of people that are simply just afraid to see it. That I do believe. I think that there are still a significant amount of people who don't want to believe that the good old US of A is not as good as we would like to think it is. And I think that scares people.
Yeah, you know what? It bothered me to hear the "Unlive to America" chants that there was recently. We heard in Dearborn and around. Recently, it's been around the pro-Palestinian protests, and I'm not. You know what? And I don't like this. I don't like any type of phrase like that. But what I'm telling people now is, I'm more concerned. Did you see them waving the Ukraine flag? I forget where your stance is on that. So I'm like, I don't care about people protesting and what they're saying if they're going to be in Congress waving the Ukraine flag. And we just found out that they literally stole our money. A lot of them, they made these fake contractors out there. The money that we gave them went to fake companies. Not all, I don't know how much of it. I got to read that. But they literally stole some of the money. And then now they didn't have the proper defenses as Russia was coming in.
Let me tell you.
Crazy.
I could not. I've seen a lot of fucked up things in Congress. The waving of the Ukraine flag is one of the most dystopian things I've ever seen in my life. It's one thing, and even that would have been extreme. It would have been one thing if that happened within like the first couple of weeks of Russia invading, and they were trying to show like a stand of solidarity with the Ukrainian people. Even that would have been 1984-ish and deeply disturbing. But the idea that this just happened in lieu of everything we know about what a scam this fucking war has been since day one, that's really scary shit. Like, that is really scary. And all I kept thinking to myself is, I can't remember the last time I've ever seen members of Congress wave the American flag.
Yeah.
Much less waving the Ukraine flag. It really is to me, that's sort of like the end of the line as far as what faith you think you can have in this government, because you can't. It's been bought and paid for by corporate special interests. There are a few outliers. There's a few good people that are there, but there's a limit to how far they can take it, and there's a limit to how far they're willing to take it. And either we can accept that or we can't. What I do know is that my faith rests in the labor movement and with the people. And the beautiful thing about the labor movement, it doesn't give a fuck where you stand politically. It just cares that you are in favor of workers instead of shareholders. It's that simple. And that is the consensus that we need to get to. And the scariest thing that people still don't want to talk about when it comes to political crossover is that you pretty much have as many Trump supporters as you do Bernie supporters that are in the labor movement. And so the sooner that bridge is brokered to bring everyone together, is the sooner we will get to a consensus of somebody like Charlie Kirk saying, you know what, single-payer healthcare isn't such a bad idea. Maybe we really need to consider the reality of this. I think that really matters.
Yeah, and that's going to happen as we get younger people in office. That's going to happen. The younger you get, I think you're going to get more people, because the divide isn't any Republican Democrat anymore. It's a whole different, and I think that leans towards the worker, and it's basically you're kind of describing, like I call populism, distributing power to as many people as possible, and that's basically what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I do think that I think people are just afraid because they know change is coming, and it's just a matter of how it's going to unfold. I am cautiously optimistic, but I also think a lot of people have just hit bottom, and they don't really know what else to do. And the constant bickering, years past, maybe they would care nonstop about Marjorie Taylor Greene, AOC, Jasmine Crockett, having a tizzy argument on the House floor. But I really would like to believe that, with the exception, really the real exception, I mean, listen, you've got your MAGA, people. I don't even like saying MAGA morons or any of that. I hate the derogatory shit. I hate that stuff. But the people that are basically just cheering on Marjorie and thinking that she's great. But the most disturbing people are the people who egg on this idea of, we're going to own the conservatives because they're dumb and we're smart and we're better and we're just going to, keep piling on. It's like, no, all you're doing is just creating a bigger wedge divide in this country. I think a lot of people on the conservative side would much more easily, say that Marjorie Taylor Greene really is a fool and does not have anything really redeemable. Yes, there's always going to be bigotry, but you can minimize it to a point in which it isn't effective anymore, where no one's even going to care. Now, what we have is a situation where everyone's looking around thinking, I can't afford to live. I can't afford to put food on the table. And this is the attention that's being given in Congress. This is what matters. This doesn't mean anything. This is stupid. And it is. So that's why these conversations are so important, because we must continue to move the narrative in the direction of a populist working class uprising. This is the only way we're getting out of this, or the system's going to completely collapse. It may collapse anyway, but the only way we build from it is if that is the case. Otherwise, it could get very ugly very quickly. Please plug whatever you're working on, whatever you're doing. It's always great to have you here, my friend.
Oh, thanks so much. You could go to middlemaga.com, put your email at the top right. I'll send you notifications and updates. I appreciate it.
You're always welcome here, my friend. Be well. Keep an eye on the campaign, as I know you will. And I look forward to some of those clips you may be cutting up, and we'll be talking real soon.
Yeah. Take care. Peace.
See you, brother. So conversations with Osiris are always welcome and always fun. The last thing I will mention before we go, and for those of you who know how much this means to me, I am beyond thrilled, as I'm sure a lot of you are, that Ireland, Norway, and Spain recognize the Palestinian state. Now, as somebody who is Irish on my father's side, this is something of considerable pride for me, because I really am appreciative of what the Irish represent, which is a culture that has never lost sight of their history and everything that they have been through for centuries. And from day one, they have been behind the Palestinian people. They have been standing with them side by side, fighting the good fight. It is truly admirable what they did. It really is. As I say, I feel a great sense of pride that the Irish have always, for the most part, gotten it right. And boy, did they get this right. Here we go. Always got to wait through the advertisement first, but you know how it goes.
Today, Ireland, Norway, and Spain are announcing that we recognize the state of Palestine. Each of us will now undertake whatever national steps are necessary to give effect to that decision. In the lead up to today's announcement, I've spoken with a number of other leaders and counterparts, and I'm confident that further countries will join us in taking this important step in the coming weeks. This is an historic and important day for Ireland and for Palestine. On the 21st of January 1919, Ireland asked the world to recognise our right to be an independent state. Our message to the free nations of the world was a plea for international recognition of our independence, emphasising our distinct national identity, our historical struggle, and our right to self-determination and justice. Today, we use the same language to support the recognition of Palestine as a state.
Couldn't have said it better. And it really is that simple. And yes, I do want to acknowledge our amazing friend, Double K, for giving us a tremendous contribution. Yes, we have a holiday weekend coming up, and I hope you all enjoy it. And yes, Metal, the Irish definitely understand a thing or two about what it means to fight off imperialism. Independence plus sovereignty, Andrew. And that is what we need. You know, Jesus, I think the masses understand that capitalism doesn't work, at least not without a balance of socialism. There is no way that it can possibly work. We have reached that point of no return. Now it's just a question of how it's going to unfold. I don't know for certain how long it's going to take. I mean, who would? But the more these types of things happen, the more that this is going to play a substantial role in finally getting some type of an end to this genocide. But then again, you never know with Israel. You never know where they're willing to go and what they're willing to do. I've always said that the most dangerous world leader by far is Benjamin Netanyahu. He's actually the first world leader I think of that would be willing to drop a nuclear bomb. It's going to be interesting because the walls are, you know, they would always joke about the walls closing in on Trump, but the walls are closing in on Netanyahu and his genocidal regime. It's happening. The world is rising up and recognizing the state of Palestine. I think the Zionists have always been used to getting away with things for a very long time, but they're about to find out that that's not going to be the case. It's not going to happen this time. There is a changing of the guard, and they are in a lot of trouble. So we'll see what happens. On Monday night, we will be speaking with Greg Stoker. A lot of you guys may know him. We are going to be talking about Free Palestine. It will be on Memorial Day evening. So hopefully everybody will be done with their BBQs and will have enjoyed themselves over the holiday weekend. It will be 9 o'clock. You guys all know what I would like you to do. It is certainly appreciative if you choose to contribute to this channel, but there is something infinitely more exciting and important that's happening right now that could use your help and attention, especially in terms of contributions, phone, text, banking, and canvassing. You know, just mentioning that in case you're thinking about lending a hand. So I would highly recommend that you do and keep spreading the word. Now, Metal, I know you mentioned about Julian Assange. It looks like Julian is going to have an opportunity to potentially get himself out of this. I don't know for certain. I think it's still a little early. You know, we keep getting these sort of near misses. Is he finally going to be free? You know, I would like to believe that he's going to find a way out of this. I want to believe that he can. But when the system's collapsing, you just don't know. Assange won a victory, but the fight isn't over. The imprisoned journalist received a rare legal win when the UK High Court ruled he can appeal his extradition to the US. Yet the fight for his freedom and the future of global press freedom is far from over. Will he win his appeal? I don't know. I hope he does. And I stand with him all the way because I actually do have principles, especially when it comes to our constitutional rights. Maybe he'll make it through, maybe he won't. I think they're just hoping he dies. But keep the faith, as I say. And for all of you that have been here this evening, I know the chat's been a little light, but it's always great to have you. You don't like my music? Metal? You guys have really dominated. Jesus, Nelson Ortega, Tony D, Self-Care Maven. No, it doesn't hurt my throat. I make sure to control what I can and can't get away with in terms of what I say. Double K, you know we love you. You've always been the best, and your support for the channel is tremendously appreciated. Earl of Laurel, thank you for coming. It's very nice to see a new face. We always appreciate those. Of course, to Osiris, Middle MAGA, great to have you here. Curious49, always happy to have you in Tau. Steve Grossman, thanks for checking in. Of course, is it still a spoon? I'm not 100% sure, but I always like questioning whether or not it is still a spoon. And I think that's it. Not a lot of chat tonight, a lot of consistency. And that means a lot. And yes, but no. It is good to have you here. An hour and a half is basically the line for me. at least in terms of going alone. And on a better note, to finish the night, from our esteemed fearless leader, free Assange. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things that we ask you to do. Steve Stoker, Monday night. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. We'll see you Monday.